Woking Palace was not only a palace, but also in effect the manor house of old royal manor of Woking. The palace stood in a park, the boundaries of which were roughly the present-day Old Woking Road, Pryford Common Road, Church Hill and Newark Lane, with the River Wey as its southern boundary. The area between the river and the River Wey navigation, known as Broadmead, was in fact Woking's Lammas Field. The manor house was recorded on site in 1272, passed through various owners in the Bassets and the Despensers, the Hollands and the Kents, and of course the Beauforts. Lady Margaret Beaufort, the mother of Henry VII, lived in the house from 1466 until at least 1471. The palace was frequently visited by Henry VII on his accession to the throne. And by his son Henry VIII, who extended the palace between 1515 and 1543. Woking Palace consisted of the Great Hall, an extensive building within a double moat, and was used by royalty during the Tudor period. Throughout Henry VIII's reign, the manor house underwent regular maintenance as well as alterations, including a new wharf by the river and 2 new bowling alleys. Maintenance included replacing the bridge planks, room partitions, retiling the roof, replacing glass in the windows, paint and plaster. Henry also had new kitchens built and joining of the Great Hall and apartments for the King and Queen. Bassets. As a royal manor, Woking was held by Edward the Confessor before the Norman conquest, and in 1066 by William I. The Crown continued to hold the manor throughout the following reigns of William II, Henry I, Stephen, and Henry II. However, in 1189, Richard I was granted the manor of Woking to Alan Bassett, by which time the site of the future palace had become established. The manor passed down the Bassett family to Philip Bassett. His daughter married Hugh Despenser about 1260, and their son, another Hugh, was the older Despenser. When Philip Bassett died in 1271, the manor descended to his daughter. Upon her death, the manor became into the hands of Hugh Despenser until it reverted to the Crown in 1327 on his execution for treason. His younger son Hugh was also executed. Edward III eventually gave the manor to Edward of Woodstock and the Earls of Kent. Edmund of Woodstock was born in 1301. He was created the first Earl of Kent in 1321 by his half-brother, King Edward II. In 1327, he was given the manor of Woking. He married Margaret, 3rd Baroness, and they had 4 children. The family may have lived at the manor house. Both sons inherited the manor in turn, but when they died, it was reverted to the Crown. Thomas Holland, who also lived at the manor, secretly married 12-year-old Joan of Kent. They had 9 children, but he was executed for treason in 1400. The Beauforts were the children of John and his mistress Catherine. Although the children were born whilst John was still married to Constance, the Act of Parliament decided that the line was still valid, and the Woking house became the House of Tudor in 1485 when Henry VII defeated Richard III at the Battle of Bosworth Field. The connection with Woking Palace began when John Beaufort married Margaret Holland. Margaret and John had a son, also called John, who married Margaret Beauchamp. She had one daughter in his marriage, Margaret. Daughter Margaret Beaufort was married at a very young age to Edmund Tudor, and they had one son, Henry. Lady Margaret Beaufort was married 3 times, and her third husband, Henry Stafford, obtained the manor of Woking by royal warrant in 1466. Henry VII persuaded his mother, Margaret, to give him Woking Manor, and he set about changing it from a manor house into a royal hunting lodge, or a minor palace fit for a king. He built a new great hall in the centre of the site and added other buildings. His son, Henry VIII, continued to rebuild and update the complex of the buildings, built new apartments for the king and queen, and installed large kitchens similar to those at Hampton Court. The royal manor house was frequently visited by Henry VII, and the Treaty of Woking was signed there on the 11th of September 1490. In 1503, Lady Margaret gave up her manor house when Henry VII decided to extend it and transform it into a palace. After Henry died in 1509, his son Henry VIII continued the royal association with Woking Palace. Henry VIII was a frequent visitor, and it became a regular holiday home, meeting place, and venue for great events. In 1515, new work began on the palace, with the main extension between 1532 and 1542. Records show that the palace included a great hall, a king's hall, queen's gallery and apartments, the king's apartments, numerous lodgings, stables, bowling green, orchids, fish pond, and extensive parklands. After Henry VIII's death in 1547, the palace was seldom used. Edward VI only visited once during his reign, and Mary I never visited. When Elizabeth became queen in 1558, the palace returned briefly to the royal favour, with alterations and additions between 1576 and 1580. Elizabeth I added new apartments and demolished, rebuilt whole sections. She was the last of the Tudors, as she died childless.